him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Hello and welcome back to On the Spot. This time I'll be looking at episode 13 of Welcome Back, Kotter. Arrivederci, Arnold. As I said, he does not go to Italy, and I guess Adios wouldn't have given them quite as much alliteration. The IMDb summary is, when it is announced that Horshack has graduated out of the Sweathogs and into regular classes, Kotter instructs the remaining Sweathogs to shun him so that he can meet people in his new classes. Which is extremely phrased, but that is basically what happens. This episode first aired on December 16th, 1975, so they had skipped the previous week. Bob Lehendro directed again. It was another episode written by the husband and wife team of Jewel Jaffe Rano and Jerry Rano. Their previous episode was Mr. Kotter Teacher, which was obviously another one about Kotter's teaching methods. In the cold opening, the Kotters are eating chocolate cake in the kitchen. He's got a vest and tie, so maybe it's at the end of a school day. She's in glasses again, as she is throughout the episode. He tells her about his Uncle Malcolm, the traveling salesman. Malcolm left his umbrella in a hotel room in Duluth, so he had to tell a sweet-talking honeymoon couple whose little eyes, whose little nose, and so on, that when they got to the little umbrella, it was his. Both Kotters laugh, and he laughs a lot. In the first classroom scene, Kotter is writing on the board, and it looks like Kaplan's actual handwriting, since it's similar to him writing on the board in the previous episode. It says, Kotter Productions present The Saga of Thomas Alva Edison. This is presumably the afternoon class rather than just homeroom. The opening applause includes whistles. Kotter says, in the continuing unit on the great inventors, today's saga is the story of Thomas Alva Edison, and the Kotter Repertory Theater presents a dramatization. So basically what it says on the board. And apparently this is something he's been doing for at least a few days. The class applauds. There's the same extras in this episode as in the previous episode, so the boys are fluffy hair, redhead, Catboy, and not Gutenberg. Joyce, the usual black female extra, is back, and I think it's the same nameless white girl who's in a better mood than she was in the previous episode. Kotter knocks on his desk. He plays the devil as Cary Grant. I don't know why, I guess it's just one of Kaplan's imitations, and maybe the devil is supposed to be suave. He does Mrs. Edison as an old Irish woman, and Thomas Alva Edison as a cranky elderly Jewish man. Edison says it's 1877, and he tells the devil to get lost because he's inventing the phonograph. The devil says and sings about how he doesn't care. One looks amused, and Freddie looks annoyed. The devil invites Edison out to a discotheque to see some go-go girls. Edison tells the devil off because if he doesn't invent the phonograph, his Stevie Wonder records won't be worth a nickel. Kotter does a little song and dance, and the class applauds again. So he's teaching history with deliberate anachronisms. Arnold does his ooh-oohs and then says, "That was very impressive, Mr. Kotter," which is one of his catchphrases, and that amuses Vinny and Verna Jean. By the way, this is Verna Jean's 6th episode. Freddie talks like a pretentious film critic, I don't think anybody in particular, and gives Kotter's performance 4 stars. Kotter says he'll see how many stars he'll give it, meaning he wants to see how successful this production was in passing on information. He asks Epstein who invented the phonograph. Epstein gives the right answer, which of course is written on the board, and then he adds that it was right after Edison wouldn't go boogieing with the devil. The class is amused, and Juan and Vinny slap hands. Kotter tells the class to forget about the devil, even though he was the one who brought the devil up, as Woodman enters with a clipboard. Woodman says the board, presumably the Board of Education, although I guess it could be the local school board, has advised Woodman that they'd like to see some of Kotter's Sweathogs promoted to regular classes. Woodman checked the records and was astonished to see one of Kotter's menagerie has made considerable progress and is now deemed promotable. So even though he is hearing good news, he's still going to compare the Sweathogs to animals. This is not that long after Barbarino's Girl, where everybody had bad midterm report cards, but maybe the last couple weeks have really shown improvement. Kotter smiles at his class, then he looks at Woodman again. Woodman says, "Welcome to the real world, Arnold Horshack." There's this thing in this episode that the Sweathogs and Kotter's class sort of exist in an unreal world, which is true, literally, but the rest of the high school is more like the real world. Verna Jean looks at Arnold, and she looks astonished but proud. Horshack falls out of his chair and faints. Everyone looks worried and gets out of their seats. One says, "You killed him!" presumably to Mr. Woodman. Vertigine and Vinny kneel beside Arnold, and she holds his hand. Vinny looks as if he's checking Arnold's heartbeat. Freddy crouches and puts his hands on Arnold's head, which is a good idea because he could have got a concussion when he fell. One is standing behind them, leaning down. The extras stand back a little, but they also look worried. It's not a big episode for the extras, but they do add a nice background. Kotter goes to Arnold and tells him to wake up. Mr. Woodman comes closer, still holding the clipboard. Vertigine tries to fan Arnold with his scarf, and we'll see quite a bit of Arnold's scarf in this episode. Not just because it's winter, but because it has become one of his recurring costume items. Kotter tells Arnold this is the biggest moment of Arnold's life, and he shouldn't sleep through it. Kotter tells Arnold to give him an ooh, ooh, ooh. Arnold sits up a little and asks what that name was again. Woodman says it, and Arnold does his laugh. Vertigine, Vinny, Arnold, Freddy, and Kotter get to their feet. Arnold says goodbye, gang. Then he shakes hands with Kotter when he says goodbye to him. He says it was great fun, but it was just one of those things. And that's one of these moments in this episode where Arnold has a very old soul kind of dialogue. Kotter squeezes Arnold's shoulders and wishes him good luck. Everyone else is back in their seats by now. Arnold drops to his knees and clutches Kotter's leg, pleading with him to tell Mr. Woodman it's a mistake. So this is similar to when Arnold's midterm report card was bad. He pleaded with Kotter then. Woodman orders Kotter to let that boy go, as if Kotter is holding on to Arnold. Although I guess in a sense, Kotter has a hold on his students by this point. An emotional hold, not manipulative, but definitely connected. Kotter tells Arnold to let go because he can't go through life with Arnold attached to his leg. Kotter says it's not a mistake, and one of his Sweathogs is moving up in the world. So even though Kotter thinks the Sweathogs should be proud of who they are, this is seen as a promotion, not just academically. Kotter says that boy down there is a symbol that Gabe Kotter is succeeding as a teacher. And of course we've seen some episodes recently where Mr. Kotter had doubts about his teaching. This is reassuring to him. Arnold in a close-up looks scared and miserable. Kotter gives Arnold the farewell Sweathog salute, saying up your nose with a rubber hose almost like it's a blessing. Arnold looks up to see it. He tells Arnold good luck in the real world, so he agrees with Woodman about that. Arnold starts clinging to Woodman, who says sometimes this job is a real drag, so pun, as he exits with Arnold attached to his leg. There's laughter and quick applause, and it is a nice sight gag, and also gives John Sylvester White some different things to do as Mr. Woodman. The bell rings. The Sweathogs look unhappy. Kotter tells them, come on, isn't that terrific? Because he wants them to be happy for Arnold. The extras and Vertigine file out, but Vinny, Juan, and Freddy go over to Kotter. Vinny says Horshack won't be able to survive in the real world. He's special. You can't put him with real people. Even Vinny doesn't see the Sweathogs as real. And this is an episode where Vinny is fatherly of Horshack in a protective, sweet way. The three of them exit. There's a cut to the hallway where Arnold runs up to see his friends. He says he's so glad to see them. He was homesick. Freddy points out that he ain't even been gone yet. It seems like it's only been a couple minutes, so he would have had to get to the class, sit down, and interact, and then make his way back already. Arnold puts his hand on Freddy's shoulder and says Freddy doesn't know what a regular class is like. No jokes, no costumes, no impressions. Very much influenced by Kotter. Arnold sits on the bench, and he says when he does his laugh, and he demonstrates it, the kids won't laugh with him, they laugh at him. One tells Horshack to talk to Kotter, who's pretty good about this kind of thing. We've already had quite a few episodes where the Sweathogs have gone to Kotter with their problems, including one. Arnold tells Epstein that Epstein doesn't realize that Arnold is Mr. Kotter's symbol of being a good teacher. So we had that already in the first scene, and it will come back. Arnold goes on to explain this to his own confusion. His friends all say yeah, like they understand. Freddy says he ain't ever knew Arnold was smart. And there have already been moments where we've had indications that Arnold is smart in his own way, as are all of the Sweathogs. Vinny gets an inspiration to say that Arnold has to just act dumb, but Arnold says he doesn't want to act dumb, it's got to come natural. Vinny, who's now on the bench next to Arnold, tells Arnold to look at him, so Arnold looks at him very closely. Vinny says he acts dumb all the time, and Arnold says he knows, and Vinny is very good at it. Vinny says what? But he doesn't do the whole routine. We're starting to get a bit of Flanderization that although Vinny has his own sort of intelligence, he is possibly the dumbest of the Sweathogs, and that will go on as the series continues. Freddie and Juan laugh and point at each other like they got the same idea. They say, "Hey," and do a quick hand clasp. Then Juan drops to the other end of the bench and Freddie kneels. Juan and Freddie think Arnold should get himself in trouble. Vinny agrees and says he can get just Arnold in trouble or his whole family. Kotter comes out of the classroom putting on his jacket. He hates to break up the reunion, but Arnold has to go make friends with his new classmates. Although I think it's the end of the school day. Everybody stands except Vinny. Arnold asks how, meaning how he can make friends, and Kotter suggests he tell them to come up and see his lunchbox, but he doesn't do it as a Mae West imitation. Arnold's friends offer encouragement, including Juan saying shalom, because Juan is Jewish. After Arnold exits, Kotter tells them that by trying to help Horshack, they're hurting him. They've got to let him try to make new friends. And at this point, that makes sense. They were trying to figure out a way to get him thrown out of his new class. Mr. Kotter wants Arnold to expand his horizons. Vinny stands and asks if there's something wrong with his old friends. Juan says you couldn't give friends like them away, and he grins. Kotter tells Epstein he's got a point there, as this is one of these moments where Juan accidentally insults the group. Kotter says if Benjamin Franklin's wife didn't tell him to go fly a kite, they'd all be standing there in the dark. And I think it's like the insult of go fly a kite. Of course, it's Franklin's wife, because Kotter likes to tell jokes about wives and husbands not getting along. He says Napoleon would be just another short person. I assume that's nothing to do with Mrs. Franklin. Abe Lincoln wouldn't be president. It'd be some stranger on the $5 bill. If they really care about Horshack, they've got to let him go. This is where Gabe goes from saying something sensible to becoming too extreme, and the shunning happens. And really it should be, let him make new friends, but he can still be friends with you, and you guys can hang out outside of school. One says he doesn't want to hurt Horshack, and Freddie says Horshack is their friend. Benny says he's not going to be the guy that stops Horshack from being president if the people want him, and Juan nods. He'd be an odd choice for president, but he's okay with that. And that's a contrast to when Vinny was running for class president and said he wouldn't vote for Juan. Arnold runs back in. He got all the way to his new class, and he realized he doesn't want to make new friends. So he's available, and he wants to know everybody's plans. We don't know at this point how long the main Sweathogs have been friends. I'm guessing maybe back in primary school, elementary school. I don't remember if we get any backstory information like that. Kotter says in a couple minutes he's got to go over to the Ben Franklin Hotel because he's going to meet a friend in the Abe Lincoln room and have a Napoleon. Arnold says good. He doesn't question this. And by the way, this is another example of how they slip in very light historical information. Behind Arnold's back, Kotter mimes to Freddie to say that he has to go play basketball. Freddie hesitantly says this, and then he exits. And we don't see Freddie play basketball, but that's just part of his character that is established, that he's the star basketball player. Arnold asks if Juan wants to play a trick on him. Juan really wants to, but in confusion, he follows Kotter's mime that he has to go study. Even Juan doesn't buy that he has to go study. I don't know if we've had any episodes yet where Juan plays a trick on Arnold, but apparently this is something that they both enjoy. After Juan exits, Kotter mimes that Vinny has a phone call. Unlike Freddie and Juan, Vinny smoothly improvises this whole little story about how he got a phone call from Bonzo Moretti, whom he hasn't seen in years. And yeah, I don't think we ever meet Bonzo Moretti, but there might be other references, and it sounds like he's Italian. Vinny says he has to go, but before he exits, he sincerely tells Arnold he's sorry, because he's not just sorry about supposedly meeting an old friend, but he's sorry that he has to stop showing friendship to Arnold. Kotter puts his arm around Arnold and says he's really proud of him. He made it out of the Sweathogs, and he's a symbol. There's a snippet of the theme and applause as Arnold looks abandoned. Kotter goes upstage, but in close-up we can see him looking worried or guilty. The next scene will later turn out to be a different day, which makes sense, because Freddie is in a yellow shirt in the first classroom scene, but a blue shirt when he shows up later in this scene. I don't know how much time has passed, maybe just a few days. It doesn't seem like it's been a few weeks. Julie is in a winter hat, gloves, a scarf, a sweater, jeans, and her glasses. She kicks the radiator and yells, "Heat! Send up heat!" She bangs on it. And as a kid, this was just one of these very New York moment kind of things that I enjoyed as a Southern Californian. Kotter is in a t-shirt and jeans, sitting on the couch with a newspaper. He asks why she's talking to the radiator when she knows it doesn't listen. He suggests she talk to the oven. Of course, we had an episode where they were both talking to the lamp. She's now looking at him with her arms crossed both for warmth and in annoyance. She says the oven is food heat. The radiator is people heat. He sets down the newspaper and comes over. He suggests they get together and generate a little body heat. And there's some flirtation off and on in this episode. Pretty shippy, although it doesn't get a chance to build. She says that's a terrific idea, but first he needs to stop pretending he's not cold and go downstairs and talk to the super. He says he's not cold. She's the one that's cold. This kind of feels like a thing of stereotypically the wife feels cold more than the husband. I think actually in Gabe's case he does warm up faster because we had the episode where he was out on the balcony in his shorts in the middle of the night. He suggests that she be the one to go downstairs and talk to Mr. Schmealer. She questions him wanting her, his wife, to go down to the basement alone. She shakes her head and says there are things in the basement, large, hairy things. He says, well, let's not discuss Mrs. Schmealer, making fun of the unseen superintendent's wife and the thing of the superintendent would live in the basement. I don't know if that's still true. He says he doesn't want to talk to Mr. Schmealer, who's a very mean man. As he kisses her neck, she tells him that body heat rests on his decision. So he's ready to make out, but she is withholding. He looks at her and says that's blackmail. She says, you got it. He nods and exits, again saying that it's blackmail. But obviously he's giving it to it because he wants to make out or more with his wife. There's a cut to Arnold grinning as he looks in the window. Julie is weirded out as she sees him, and Arnold saw them practically necking. He cheerfully waves. She opens the window and asks what he's doing here. He comes in and says he's got to talk to her alone. She shuts the window and asks how he knew she'd be alone. As they both rub their own arms, he says he was the one who turned down the heat. He laughs. So this was actually Arnold interfering with the heat. I guess he knows them well enough to know that more likely Mr. Kotter would leave to talk to the super. She pats Arnold's shoulder and tells him to sit down. They both sit on the couch and he says he's got a favor to ax of her, because that's how he pronounces ask. She says, ax, Arnold, ax. So she's teasing him, but she's also being sympathetic. She's going to listen. He wants her to use her multifaceted female charms to get Mr. Kotter to like him again. I guess he's already seen how she can use her charms to get Mr. Kotter to talk to Mr. Schmealer. She says Mr. Kotter likes him and he should be proud of the example he's setting for all the Sweathogs. Arnold obviously has taken this very personally. He thinks Mr. Kotter doesn't like him and has turned the other Sweathogs against him. Arnold says, ha! loudly in her face a few times, so she leans back and then edges as far away on the couch as she can. Then he backs off, so she moves closer again. He takes off his hat and says that's not what they want him or need him for, meaning the Sweathogs. Smiling fondly, he says Vinny needs him so he can feel important. One needs him so he can feel strong. He doesn't know why Freddie needs him, but you never know when he might. Pretty good summary of Arnold's friendship with each of them. I would argue that Arnold is less close to Freddie than he is to Vinny or Juan. But as Freddie said, they are friends. And Arnold has pretty good emotional intelligence. He understands people pretty well. Still smiling, Arnold asks if Julie thinks it's unmanly to cry. She says no, of course not, because she's a modern woman. She's not going to care about him being macho. And not that he ever is. So he sobs and leans on her. She puts her arms around him and pats him with her mittens. And this is definitely an episode where we see Julie's fondness for Arnold come through. There's laughter and applause as Gabe returns. Gabe says, is he crazy or does he see Arnold Horshack nestled to his wife's bosom? Julie looks annoyed, but Arnold screams and sits up. He pleads with Mr. Kotter to not get the wrong idea. This is not one of them kinky scenes. Julie shakes her head like, no, this is not kinky. There's laughter and applause again. This plays very differently than the scene where Julie came in to find Rosalie kissing Gabe. Gabe is not threatened by Arnold. And Arnold, I don't think it would ever occur to him to come on to Julie, which I cannot say is true of the other three. In a southern accent, Gabe tells Julie he knows she was trying to keep warm, but this is absolutely ridiculous. In his regular voice, he says the heat's on. Julie excuses herself from Arnold and says she's going to go sit on the radiator. He tells her to, go ahead, go ahead. Gabe asks Mr. Kinky, what's up? I don't know if it's come up yet on this show. I think I did talk about it on my Mork and Mindy podcast. You would hear the word kinky on 70s sitcoms, including ones that children watch, like for instance Three's Company. It didn't mean full out what kinky means, but vaguely sexual, I guess. Arnold stands and says he just came by to tell Mr. Kotter how great things is going for him. He sure is one happy symbol of good teaching. He laughs nervously, not like his usual laugh. He says and even sings happy a few times. He tells Julie, who is indeed sitting on the radiator, by the way, that thing they was talking about, if she doesn't help him, he's going to throw himself off the highest mountain in Brooklyn. Apparently he's not doing well in geography. He goes to the front door and leans against against it. He dramatically says, and when they find him, if they find him, they'll never know who he was. John Doe Horshack, a Slavic legend in his own time. So I've been wondering about his ethnicity. He's Slavic, which is still kind of vague. And yeah, he is anonymous as John Doe, but he's still Horshack. He puts his hat on, covering his eyes, and he exits to understandable applause. Gabe nods while Julie in close-up looks concerned and or mad. Gabe goes over to Julie and says that call it a sixth sense, but he gets the feeling something is bugging Arnold. He opens the other window than the one that Arnold came through. Julie stands and sarcastically says that yes, something is bugging Arnold. She shuts the window, which pops up a couple inches, and I don't think it's supposed to, but they just keep going with it, and you can kind of play it off as well. It's an old rundown New York apartment. She says the poor kid is miserable and he's not going to learn anything in that new class if he doesn't want to be there. She rubs her arms for warmth again. Gabe wants to put up the window and she tries to stop him. He does it halfway and says it's a compromise, which I thought was a nice little marital moment with them. He puts his hands on her crossed arms and says she's right. Horshack only started to do good because he felt he belonged. He grips her arms and kisses her on the mouth. She kisses back, but she uses this opportunity to slide down the window. But then Vinny comes in the other window. Gabe looks annoyed. Probably both because his makeout was interrupted again and because he doesn't like them to come through the window. Vinny enters, followed by Freddie, Juan, and Vertigine as everyone exchanges greetings. This is another episode where Vertigine visits the apartment with the Sweathogs, like in the reunion episode. She doesn't get a lot to do in this episode, but I do like those moments of her being included. Gabe says he's going to put a door on his window. That way, they'll come through the door. The Sweathogs start acting like they're cold, and Vinny says it's cold in here. So I guess it's colder in the apartment than it is outside. Freddie says you could freeze off your fandangos. Nowadays, we associate Fandango with ordering tickets, and it's also a streaming service. It looks like the literal definition is a lively Spanish dance for two people, typically accompanied by castanets or tambourine, or a foolish or useless actor thing. But of course, he makes it sound like a body part that he's euphemizing. One says they've come on a mission of mercy. Vertigine asks if they can stop being mean to Horshack yet, so that makes me think that this has been going on for a few days, and probably Freddie clued her in onto Kotter telling them to shun Arnold. And obviously she doesn't enjoy being mean to Horshack, because it's pretty clear that Vertigine is fond of Horshack. Gabe says he was thinking about that, and he was wrong. You guys were right. Horshack definitely belongs with the Sweathogs. He sits on the couch. The kids are happy. Gabe says he'll go to Mr. Woodman and explain the entire thing rationally. He's sure Mr. Woodman will understand. The Sweathogs gather on or around the couch as Freddie tells Mr. Kotter it's better to con Mr. Woodman into giving Horshack back. Gabe asks if they plan to trap him in a motel room with a cheerleader. So yes, another joke about a faculty member with an underage girl. Vinny says it'll be the way Mr. Kotter cons them in class. He dramatizes to sneak his point across. One says they thought they'd put on a little play for old Woodman and convince him to see things their way. They apparently have had time to come up with this plan, which they will put into effect in the next scene, which is presumably set during homeroom. This is an episode where Kotter admits he's wrong, and we had that in the episode where Vinny was running for class president. That is one nice thing about Kotter. He is in some ways the voice of wisdom and reason, but he's still a young man, he's still a new teacher, and he makes mistakes and he owns up to them. We fade to the classroom, and as I said, it's definitely the next day, and Freddie's now in a red turtleneck, so he does all three primary colors in this episode. What I can read on the chalkboard later, it says, I think in Kotter's handwriting, Sweathog Productions present Come Back Little Arnold, a drama in one act. And I believe that that is a reference to the 1952 movie based on the 1950 play Come Back Little Sheba, which I've never seen. Vinny, Freddie, and Vertigine are talking by Kotter's desk while one stands by the rolling chair with a seat cushion. Kotter escorts in Mr. Woodman, who they all call Mr. First Nighter. They have him sit in the seat after one puts down the cushion, and they have him put his feet up on the desk. Vertigine even gives him a program for the play, which in close-up looks like a folded map, and for some reason a meerschaum pipe. Kotter tells Woodman that this is a dramatization, and he should pretend he's at the theater. In one of my favorite lines of the episode, Woodman says he hates the theater. The last time he went to the theater, they robbed his house. It was just such a Woodman thing to hate something as harmless as the theater. He sets down the program and pipe. Vertigine uses two boards that look like they're from woodshop as clapperboards. She says, presenting the little Sweathogs in Come Back Little Arnold. It it quickly becomes clear that the Little Sweathogs are doing a Little Rascals parody, and quite well. Their scripts are on paper that is, of course, light blue, because that is the popular paper color on this show. Juan and Freddie are facing away from each other, and they march backwards until they bump into each other. Then they do very exaggerated faces of surprise. Juan reads, "Boy, without Horshack's calming influence, I really feel mean." They both grimace, but when one growls, Freddie looks startled again. There's laughter and applause. Juan reads aloud that he thinks he'll go out and bite a tree. Freddie puts out an arm like a branch, and Juan pretends to bite it. Freddie does a fake ow. Then Freddie does his line without reading, but as an Irishman, complete with the word begorra, he drifts into Jamaican. There's a cut to Woodman resting his chin on his hand. And of course, Woodman could leave at any time, but I think he's just trapped by the inertia of disbelief. Juan points in front of Freddie's face and says, "Look, here comes Horshack now." Freddie pulls down Juan's arm and again looks amazed. Then Mr. Kotter comes in complete Horshack drag, from hat to long scarf to green jacket. He smiles and looks down modestly. The laughter and applause lasts for over 10 seconds. I think this is the first time we get one of them dressing up as another one of them. That's a pretty big deal. Gabe does his best Arnold impression with the introduction and the laugh, and there's laughter and applause again, but shorter. Vinny glances at his script and then says, "Horshack, you have returned." He goes over the desk and, as a theatrical aside, says that their life had lost all meaning without their little friend Horshack to lend a helping hand. Arnold enters the open door and he and Gabe simultaneously hold out their hands to Vinny, saying, "Here, Vinny, here's my helping hand." Then Gabe and Arnold look at each other, doing a variation on the duck soup mirror routine, but with sound, including Horshack's laugh and ooze. There's laughter and applause. Arnold puts his face right under Cotter's and rubs his own upper lip. Then he backs off a little and says he don't got a mustache. Kaplan looks like he breaks a couple times during this interaction. Both Kotter and Arnold have put their matching lunchboxes on the desk. Presumably it's Roy Rogers, because that's what we found out what it was recently. So Arnold now points both pinkies on his own lunchbox and asks Woodman what's going on. Woodman says, "Don't ask him, he's Mr. First Nighter." Kotter tells Arnold that they were acting, well, overacting, because they missed him so much. Arnold is obviously touched. Juan and Freddie come over and Juan says they kid around a lot, but they really missed him. Freddie puts his hand on Arnold's shoulder and says he never thought he would miss Arnold, but he sort of grows on a guy, like mold. Arnold smiles like this is a compliment and he thanks him. So again, Freddie and Arnold are not as close, but Freddie does have a grudging like of him. Arnold says he is truly gratified to learn that they missed him too, meaning he missed them. Arnold wants Woodman to look at him, both of him, and he uses Kotter as a second self, even squeezing Cotter's face. At the end, he and Gabe smile as Arnold leans against Kotter and Kotter rests his head on Arnold. Kotter says someday they'll name a wing at this school after both of them, the Horshack wing. Then Gabe, the four main Sweathogs, and Vertigine turn into chickens, clucking and flapping their arms like wings. Woodman stands and tells them to stop that flapping. They're making a draft. He can't let Arnold back in this classroom. How will he keep his grades up? Vinny sincerely says he'll help Arnold. Vertigine looks dubiously up at him. Kotter tells Woodman that if Arnold learned anything to get ahead, he learned it in this classroom, because for someone to learn, they've got to feel secure. They have to feel like they belong. Arnold beams. And yeah, it's corny, but it's actually true. Woodman irritably tells Horshack to get back where he belongs with Cotter's bunch. Arnold grabs Woodman's hand and kisses it as the others cheer. Woodman exits. The extras cluster around, also looking happy. Arnold thanks them all and says that in his other class, every time he made a joke, the teacher said, "School is not a laughing matter." The not Gutenberg guy chuckles. And then Arnold goes into Cotter's version of Groucho and says, "Oh yeah, you should try Mr. Cotter's class." The not Gutenberg guy laughs again. Gabe puts his arm around Arnold and says, "Welcome back, Horshack." So John Sebastian on cue sings "Welcome Back." And everyone pretends to blow, I think, New Year's horns or noisemakers. And there's, of course, applause. In the tag, the Cotters are sitting very close on the couch with her arm on his shoulder and he's stroking her hair. This time her glasses are on top of her head. She's in plaid with jeans and platform sandals. As she puts one leg over both of his, he starts to tell her about the present his Uncle Howard gave Aunt Bernice for her birthday. They're very rich and Aunt Bernice has everything. Howard bought her a $5,000 parrot that speaks 7 languages. The parrot didn't tell her this, so she ate it. Both Cotters laugh and then they kiss. We're far enough into season 1 that everybody's character is established enough and the whole concept is established. So now they're kind of playing with that. What would happen if you took Arnold out of that environment? How would that affect him, and how would that affect his friends? And to a lesser degree, how would that affect the Kotters? I give each of these episodes a letter grade from F- to A+, and I gave this one a B+. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny and sweet and fun, but I do feel it could have been better. I would have liked to have seen something of Arnold in the other class and not just hear about it. Even if it was just simply that the Sweathogs see Arnold in the hallway and there are his new classmates maybe snubbing him or something. So that just felt a little bit uneven. This is what Roger Ebert called an idiot plot, where if only somebody spoke up, then this all could have been prevented. But they do try and fix it, and I don't know how long it took them to write the play, but obviously Juan has not yet memorized his lines. This is a good ensemble episode. Everybody gets their moments to shine, although not Verna and Jean so much, but they also work well as a team, and it sort of is an episode about that team and that dynamic. And we also get some interesting interactions with Julie and the Sweathogs, and I always like that when they come to visit. And as I said, you get to see the Julie and Arnold friendship here. Nothing kinky. I also thought Woodman was very Woodman. There's not a lot of him, but he is used effectively both in the scene where he makes the announcement and in the scene where he is forced to watch this amateur production and eventually gives in. Because really, I think to Woodman, although the school board said that one of the Sweathogs could be moved out, I don't think it's really that important. He's not going to argue to keep Arnold out of the Sweathogs. For each episode, I choose a head of the class, not necessarily a student, and that is the person whose performance I most enjoyed in the episode. And as I said, with the exception of Verna Jean, who just didn't have enough to work with, everybody was at the top of their game. I enjoyed the little play. I enjoyed watching them all react to what happened. And I did think that Julie had some fun stuff, and it's interesting to see her flirting with Gabe, but also annoyed with him, interacting with Arnold and the others. I think it's appropriate considering the doppelganger part that I will just, for the first time, go with a tie between Gabe and Arnold. There's a lot of good Gabe stuff in this. Obviously, he's doing various impressions and voices from Cary Grant to Arnold Horshack. Like I said, I think it rounds him to be wrong sometimes and to be big about that. His pride in Arnold is partly an ego thing for himself, as when Vinny was running for class president, but he recognizes that. It's fun to see Kaplan and Strassman flirt and be intimate in a very clean way in this episode. And then Arnold, it could have been very one note that he doesn't want to go to this other classroom, and he never has a moment where he thinks, oh, there is this perk. There are pros and cons. He just doesn't want to go. He feels like they're leaving him. But we get some insights into how Arnold sees his role in the Sweathogs and the kind of support that he gives to his friends, and also what they do for him. That's really sweet. We have Ron Palillo playing very broad, even farcical comedy, but also some more sensitive and insightful moments. I was actually leaning towards a B because I felt like, well, this is a good, solid episode. It does everything it needs to do. There could have been more, but I felt like it just had enough that nudged it higher. And it was watching it again, taking notes, that I noticed a lot of just little things that I've mentioned. Definitely recommended, and one of the best episodes of season 1. Although it's not an episode I think about that much compared to the previous episode, California Dreamin'. Next time, I'll be looking at the episode The Longest Weekend. We'll see which weekend it is and why it feels long. In the meantime, find yourself somewhere that you feel safe and comfortable and learn what you can. Arrivederci.
Tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back.